I'm trying to get your pictures even so I can talk about them here. No, that's definitely not what I want. I want a teeny bit smaller so I can make sure I fit it on the whole screen. Anyway, so first I would like to say I think you have an eye for people. And I think that there's really something nice happening in a lot of these pictures. Some are better than others. I think this one is quite striking. I'm thinking about this idea of like Starbucks and baristas and ASU online, and thinking that it's only a matter of time before somebody really does a really good survey, photographs like every single barista they can or something. I think that there's something interesting and potential there, interesting potential. Um, so so I think overall, I think the feeling of this picture is really strong. I'm interested in him, which for me is always the like number one thing about a portrait is like, am I interested in this picture and this person and what I see? I'm interested in Caleb. I think there's a little bit holding you back, and this is true of several of your pictures. And partly, I wonder if it's the camera quality issue, because it's feeling like it feels like the picture's a little faint. It's a little bit like noisy. You can see like it's blasted out. It's not as sharp as it could be, and the colors are slightly off. It's slightly red. So anyway, I don't know if you're using any post-production, but maybe a way to, I need to turn off those notifications. Maybe there's a way to intensify the contrast a little bit between him and the wall behind him. But the gesture's great. His head tilted just a little bit. I think that that's nice. This one for me is a little less interesting. It's kind of feels a little bit more like descriptive and I appreciate that you're trying an interesting angle. But it feels more like something. It feels less about the person and more about like the cups and the arrangement than him. More about like describing life at Starbucks, which is a possible approach that you could take, but again, not nearly as interesting as some of the other pictures, like this one. And there's something about the sweetness in his face. Again, I think his face is a little bit too blown out. I'd like to see a little bit more distinction. I know that redheads have difficult skin to photograph, and that it's we are so pale that sometimes it doesn't come through. But I think because you photographed him against a window, it'd just be nice if there was a little bit more, because I'm a little distracted by that. But the expression is great. And again, this gesture, I wonder if you move back just a teeny bit, it might be more interesting. And I'm slightly distracted by this guy in the back. But overall, I'm excited about these barista pictures. So this one has like this kind of sweetness and this energy, and you wrote that it was about ministry and working with children. And I think that it's good at like more like describing it, and showing that they're happy. And but what really interests me is the girl and her hand and the nail polish and the card that she's holding. This part, just the little girl looking up and the way her face is illuminated, I think is really a strong image. A strong part of the image. And I do like the glowing children in the back, but there's so much what I think is wasted space at the top of the picture. So a tighter crop, and parts of this are stronger than others. So consider that. I think you're good at gesture, but this feels to me, the overall picture feels to me a little bit more kind of prescribed, like, okay, it's describing these two people together, this young woman working with this child. Whereas if it were just the child, it would be so much more about she's looking at something and what is she looking at, and kind of this immersion of childhood and the glow a little bit of the video game, and even this like little blue guy behind her head. So anyway, that's what I think is happening in that picture. And this one just feels like kind of like a cute little snapshot. I think I'm distracted by the focus, so her face is out of focus, but this little, I don't know, is it a bow on the wall? So this feels like a kind of a cute shot, but it doesn't have that punch. I do think it has some of the potential that the Starbucks pictures have, though. I mean, I do think she's obviously relaxed in front of you, and I think you could make an interesting portrait of her. But because of the emotion that's being expressed and the lack of focus, it feels more like a snapshot to me than a portrait. And then this feels just kind of goofy. I do think you've got the colors are nice, but again, the whites are super blown out. I think your camera's holding you back. This contrasty, you're not getting as many of the tonalities, especially in the whites that you want. The colors are vibrant, but the whites are not holding enough detail to really for the pictures to work as effectively as I think they should. Yeah, and then this one again, the lighting's a little bit distracting. There's a huge amount of the picture that's totally black, which can sometimes work, but I think in this case, I'm not interested. So you're like giving up all that real estate, to 35% of the picture, when I'm much more interested in her and her expression. All right, this is just, I mean, I don't have anything against weird kind of things, but I feel like this one's kind of, she's just kind of mugging for the camera. So this one is not, I'm not interested in that. Technically also, it's not very strong. She's out of focus. The tree isn't in very sharp focus. And yeah, it doesn't hold up. This one is interesting. I think the lighting is a little bit problematic, that so much of her face is in like this heavy shadow, or not even heavy shadow, but it's contrasty. Her eye recedes. I think older people are harder to photograph than younger people, and I think there's a number of reasons, being more self-conscious. I also think that they're not as used to being photographed. I think younger people are used to being photographed more and more. This is particularly true when you photograph men. Like, younger men are so much easier than older men, and I think just younger men now are a little bit more aware of their image. But anyway, so this, and I don't know if this is your mother or an aunt, but I think there's I think there's potential there, or grandmother, potential there. I assume everyone's like my age and realize potential for some good shots there. I think it might take a little bit more time. This feels like you need to warm up a little bit more. And another thing to know about portraits is you have to take a lot. You often have to take a lot. And then people get anxious, like, why are you taking so many? You have to say, well, the more I take, the better the chance that there's going to be a really good one. But sometimes people just get anxious when you take a lot. I mean, I don't know if this happened. But anyway, consider the lighting. I think there's an emotional potential in this picture, but I think it's not as strong as it could be. Yellow dig. This one too. This one's really interesting. I actually have a portrait that I made of my grandfather sitting in a chair, composed actually very similarly to this one. Again, the camera's holding you back. The whites just being blasted out right there in this kind of contrasty. And the red are holding this back, but I think that there's some really interesting things. Again, I feel this emotional connection in your pictures, and I do think you have an eye for portraits. I think you have some work to do, but I feel like you have what you need to have to start making it. So in short, paying attention a little bit more to the lighting, to the focus, and the composition. And those are all things that you can do, like not rear lighting, like not setting people up with a window behind them, and making sure that you have adequate light when you photograph people. These are all things that you can do without getting a new camera. And also think about the expressions on people's faces, and look through these pictures again and see if you agree with me, but also see which ones like feel like they hit you in the gut more than others. All those things I think you can work on without getting a new camera. I do think you might want to think about it though, because I feel like the technical limitations of the camera are holding you back a little bit. But you can do a lot with the tool that you have, and I'm excited. I'm impressed with this, and I feel that there's this emotional connection there, which is really the hardest thing about photographing people. So nice job.